GoPro Hero10 with a 5.3K video log while I'm driving around here all day long on the interstate today. And I want to talk about the GoPro Hero10 and if it's good or bad or what the deal is with it. Now, today during my test, so I'm testing this now for, I don't know, like 2 weeks maybe? I don't know. And so I have a few issues there during those tests. Like one is, for example, overheating. If you run it on the desk, if you put it on the desk and have it run, then it overheats after a while, after a short while. Then there was some SD card issues. We can talk about that later too. And freeze issues. Where it freezes. Battery issues where it needs a lot of battery. And other than that, in the dark, so if you have low light situations, the image quality is not really amazing. And it's amazing though, the image quality in 5.3K. And then we have the playback. So who can watch 5.3K videos? You know, those are those people with those 5K IMAX. So when you go to the store, you buy like 4K screens, 4K TVs. So there's just only a few people going to buy 8K, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's nice stuff in this car here. Yeah, so that's the thing. Those are the issues or the things I'm going to talk about today. Now I have several small videos here to cut up. Oh, the thing is, so who can edit 5.3K? I'm going to talk about that too. So there's multiple things we should talk about. I should write this down on a piece of paper and then go through piece by piece. Alright? Okay. Hero10 and batteries. So we do have a battery in there that came with a battery in the camera, and that seems to be the same battery as the GoPro Hero9 was using. The Hero 8 has a slightly smaller battery, a different charger, but the 9 does have the larger battery. For the 9 there exists a dual charger, an external dual charger that can be powered with USB-C. To get a lot of power to that kind of charger, you need a USB-C power supply. Can be a laptop charger, can be a power bank maybe. It's something that has enough power. So we're talking in the range of 3-4 amps. Because I see when the battery is charging, it charges with, like the most it charges ever is like 1.5 amps. So that's what I see in my test I did with a little device where I can see how much it's charging really. And even if it's in the camera, it's like rarely going over 1.5 amp with the camera running. So that's the thing we're talking about. That also makes sense to those batteries. So they have 1700 milliamps amp hours. 1700, so if you charge with 1 amp, for example, it would take 1.7 hours to charge it. So 1.5 hours, because you don't discharge the battery all the way, right? So once the camera shuts down, there is still, let's say, like 200 milliamp left in it. So you only have to charge 1500 milliamp hours, and that's 1.5 hours if you charge with 1 amp. If you charge with 1.5 amp, it takes 1 hour. So that's those times we charge. With my particular camera, the problem I had, if I was charging inside the camera would turn on during the time of the charge at one point, mostly around 80%. it would turn on and then stop charging, because when the camera is running, there's not enough power within the camera to handle the charge. So it would charge all night, and the camera would be warm because it's running all the time, or most of the time. And you would never be able to charge more than 80%. Now I asked a few people on my channel in in a poll, and so that happened to 30% of the people that the camera didn't charge in camera all the way, and others most likely are charging externally and don't charge really in the camera. Who knows what the real number is there? But that seems to be the best to do in this camera, in the H10, is to have an external charger that has enough power to charge those batteries, and then really have 4 batteries at hand if you go like one day to make a video, right? SD cards for the Hero10. So for the longest time with the Hero9, we were working with a SanDisk 64GB Pro cards, Extreme Pro. That's like the black and red card, and so that worked pretty well. And the 10, I have problems with that card. I have 2 or 3 of them. I have problems with camera lockup, camera being unable to write onto the card with those messages too. So where the camera is asking for a better card. So those things I have with those 64GB Pro cards from SanDisk. That doesn't mean that those cards are bad. It just means that this camera needs better, right? And it surely also depends on what you want there. If you have a 4K 30 with a low bitrate, 5K 60 with a high bitrate, that's the problem. So from what I understand, and that's what I have to explain quick for my other camera, I have a Blackmagic pocket cinema camera. So in there I use a Samsung T5 SSD drive to record my video, and that camera makes way more data than a GoPro ever could. It's like a professional camera, and the 1 terabyte T5, it does 500 megabytes per second, and it does this pretty well, and the cameras work great. Now Samsung also makes a T7, and if you buy a T7 with the same size, the T7 is twice as fast. It can do 1 gigabyte or 980 megabytes per second, way faster than the T5. And when you attach one of those drives, it really fails within seconds. And now the Blackmagic, being a professional camera, will immediately tell you what happened there and cancel the recording. But you get an error message on what happened. So it's like basically dropped frame. Now Blackmagic was asked to explain how that happens and how that is possible with a twice as fast of a drive. And they explained it in a way that the data, when they say they can write 900 megabytes per second, that doesn't mean that they can write fast enough in the beginning of the second. So on average, during 1 second they can do 900, but in the first few milliseconds, they are not fast enough to write the frame, and that makes it different. The brand, the part, or the kind of memory design they have, when they have those read or write speeds, they have to be able to constantly write with the same speed without exception very early on, like not wait like 5 milliseconds, right? And now if we translate this to the GoPro Hero10, so we have a 5.3K video with 60 frames per second. So we write 60 of those pictures, and every second the card has to be fast enough to take the first picture when it's coming, and not fast enough after, like, let's say the first 10, right? So then you get those problems, and then the system cannot write, and maybe the software doesn't have cannot handle when there is frames missing, or when the memory medium is not taking the frames. Because there's new frames coming, and they're coming, and then this thing couldn't write the first 5 ones, so what is it going to do? And that's where you get those lockups and problems, because the memory, it runs out of memory. The camera does, right? So probably the camera is recording the video to memory, and the memory is dumped onto the memory card, and if the memory card is not fast enough in the very first few milliseconds, then it's not going to happen. And it doesn't have to do with the brand name or what card you have there, so it has to do with the individual card, like, you know, all the testing they do with those cards. Maybe the 32 gigabyte card is good, the 64 gigabyte is not good, and the 128 is good again, 512 maybe not good. An extreme version can be good, can be failing, who knows. And then plus it could be like a serial number, right? So let's say SanDisk is making a batch of cards and they can handle that, and then the next batch can't, so you never know for sure what's going on in there, right? And so right now I'm using a 128 gigabyte, a Samsung Pro something, and that seems to be better. It's not flawless, it's expensive, way too expensive, like twice as much, and it's yeah, it's not 100%, but I have way less issues. What also could help is to get the bitrate down, like to go with a low bitrate instead of a high bitrate. That's another test I'm trying right now. So today I am going with a low bitrate to see if I have issues there. Because what I don't understand is when I ask people online, what is your experience with your card? There's a bunch of them that work it with a SanDisk Extreme Pro for a while and have no problems, as well as people who have a Samsung 128 gigabyte card and they don't have issues. And then again, there's others that have issues, so I'm not sure. So then we get into the bitrate, right? So the high bitrate, are they really using it or not? And when you use a high bitrate, your processing time later, when you process your video, you will spend more time on that. Your computer has more data to look through. And that will be in the next clip, where I'm talking about the high bitrate and the processing on your computer later once you have those videos. Right, GoPro Hero10. You're recording all day long with 5.3K, 60 frames a second, and you do this one whole day, let's say 8 hours, you are working around there, and then you do your end of the day, you take your SD card out and you go and put it in your computer, and then you see you have 40 gigabytes. Right? So you have 40 gigabytes of data of video, and now you need a computer to deal with this. So the first question is, can your computer even edit 5.3K video? You know, that's a big thing. Now, this kind of video will be in the HEVC data format, so that is called high efficiency video codec. That kind of stuff is usually managed by an extra chip in your computer, not necessarily from the graphic card. So there is like a chip in there that deals with that kind of codec, and if your computer doesn't have that, it will take forever. And when I say forever, I'm talking days. Now, then the 5K thing, can your computer play 5K? You have probably probably a 4K screen, a 4K monitor on your desktop, and you can see those things. Or you have an iMac. If you have an iMac, 5K iMac, they make those, then you have 5K screen and you can watch it. That's the easiest, so I think the easiest and cheapest way to get to that. Just buying a 5K screen will be difficult because I haven't seen any. Maybe 8K screen, very expensive. Who has that? 8K TV maybe. The question is that thing really 8K? Or is it an upscale 4K? Can you really process 5K footage, or does it scale? That's the question. Yeah. But let's say an iMac 5K can handle this whole thing, and so you get all your footage together, you cut and do it here and there, your video is edited, and now you have to export it. Now you try to export this to 5.3K with an HEVC codec, and then you will find out that that does not work, because at least on my software, on my Mac, it says that that doesn't work because it's outside the format or the size of HEVC. What cannot be true, because the data is coming in HEVC. It can play it, it can copy it, it just can't create that size of video. Who knows why that is? So yeah, you don't do anything there. So you need CPU, a lot of CPUs, to process this and make a video you can upload to YouTube. And then if you really have 40 gigabyte of data and you have like half an hour movie, this will take a very, very long time to upload, and you have a lot of gigabytes available to upload. And you can't do the full bitrate, the full quality from GoPro to upload there. You would have to really lower the quality down quite a bit. So, and then at the end, if you have it uploaded to 5.3K 60 onto YouTube, it's on there. And who can watch that? Again, the folks with the 5K Max, they can watch it. But who else, right? There's just a few devices that can handle that. Okay. So, is that worth it? I'm not so sure. But you paid for it, right? You bought this expensive camera, the GoPro Hero10, so you might as well use your 5K. That's what it is. GoPro Hero10 image stabilization. You can believe me, it's fantastic. It does really stabilize very good. The boost thing there, love it. It needs a lot of battery power. So if you, like me now, having the camera fixed with a suction cup to a window in a car, there's no need to turn that on. It's when you walk around. If you walk on it. Wow! So my battery just lost power while I was recording, and that's part of the experience here. The question is why. Now, what I noticed was that the battery was extraordinarily hot. And I am not sure if the battery was so hot because the battery heated up on its own, that the battery became very hot. Or if it was because the camera was so hot that the camera was warming up the battery. Now, I am sure, so I know for sure that in the battery is a temperature sensor in the battery, and it's going to throw a fit when that gets too hot in there inside the battery, because we don't want the battery to explode. So the battery controller will most likely shut down any charging activity and any discharge activity when the battery gets too hot. Every battery individually will have that. And you just hope that it works, because if it doesn't work, your battery could catch on fire and blow. So So this is possible that GoPro is using some high quality batteries where that doesn't happen so easy, and that it's quite normal when the batteries are so hot. Yes. So camera is super hot, battery is super hot. I have the air conditioner pointed at the camera, so I'm trying to cool it down, but we also have a direct sun hitting the camera on the back. But let's hope that is good. Now I'm going to stop the recording for a little bit to give the camera a chance to cool down. Alright, so I'm ready to talk about the hardware here. The camera, on first use, you can notice this, especially where you have to change the battery so often, where it needs a lot of battery. The battery door is really hard to open and close. Open mostly, it's very tight. It's much tighter than it is for the GoPro Hero10. And also the lens cover. So when you remove the lens to put the lens mod on, that seems to be way harder than it was on the Hero9. And also I notice when you insert the battery seems to be very loose in there. Like, that's odd. Any battery, like I have 4 different ones from the 9 as well as the one that came with the 10. So when you plug that in there, it's a very loose fit. It's amazing, but it doesn't matter if you close the battery door is pushing the battery into the slot. And it's secure there, but it still for sure feels loose. And other than that, everything seems to be fine. You can use the Hero9 media mod that comes with a microphone, a better microphone, and extra case. So you would have to remove the battery door and plug that extra case in there. Now that is good and fine, but it makes your life difficult if you have to switch the battery all the time. Now, external power source is possible, so you can power the camera with an external battery bank, but the problem is that the display is turned off most of the time, and that did not happen with Hero9. So the first time with 10, you connect it, and when you start recording, your display turns off. Why that is, I don't know. If that is a bug, we will see with the later firmware in November. Supposedly they come out with new firmware that is supposedly, or maybe it's fixed with that new firmware. The new firmware also will enable the possibility of the lens mod, because right now when you install the lens mod, that's fine, you can install it, but if you push the button that it is installed, it will give you an error message that it's not possible right now and you need to wait for the next firmware. So until that is out, we don't know how the lens mod looks like, if it has restrictions in regards to the resolution. You can use it on the Hero9. The lens mod was restricting your whole experience to 2.7K. I don't know what it will do on the Hero10. If we are very lucky, we will probably get a 4K, and we will have the lens mod in 4K, but not at 5.3. I don't see how that is possible. But 4K, that's probably available. That would be neat if that works. So yeah, for that we have to wait in November for that new firmware to decide. So are there any positives about this camera? Yes, there are positives. I think the image quality in 5.3K, that's a positive thing. I also recognize the audio quality of the microphones in here, like the original microphones that are in the camera. They are pretty good, I have to say that. those are the positives I can tell you. The image stabilization, this hyper smooth 4.0, very positive. And then the things we don't like so much. What is the worst? The one you have to deal with every day. That was the same in the 9. When you start your recording, you never know if the camera is really recording, right? So you have to double check. What is difficult if the camera is mounted on your helmet and you can't see it. So when you start a recording, you have to double check, are we really recording? Freeze up, second one. So while you're recording, all of a sudden it stops recording and freezes. That's not so good. Overheating in that scenario. Then after that, the battery usage, it really needs a lot of battery. That's fine. The external battery does not work good because you lose your screen when you do that. Doing recording, right? The low light quality is not that very great. The quality of those high frame rates, like 4K 240 frames per second, it's not good quality. I don't understand what happens there. There's a little bit of an issue. Then, yeah, we talked about low light. So low light is not nice. Low light is very grainy, pixelated, and the only good part at night is the microphone again is working well, and that's it already, right? So not much more to say about it. The price is not that great. But that's a whole different story. Okay, so the final question for the GoPro Hero10. Will I return the camera or do I keep it? And the other question is, would I buy it again? Would I buy it again? Yes, I would buy it again. Yeah. Do I keep the camera? Yeah, so at least until the new firmware comes out, I keep it, right? So I want to see, does the new firmware fix things? You know, that's one of the questions I have. Does the new firmware make this a lot better? Then we can talk about it again. And then I also want to know how the DJI Action, that's what they will call the Osmo Action 2. DJI Action, so how good is that compared? Can that compete or not? Now, from what I see from the initial leaks in the internet, the leaks, it doesn't have 5.3K, and that is the sales argument in the Hero 10. So they have a place side by side, right? The 5.3K will be better than 4K, no matter what DJI does. But software-wise, the DJI is probably better. And then also, additionally, comes up that the state government, or was it the federal government here, is saying that DJI is spying with their drones on the US infrastructure and reporting those images back to China. Now, if that's true, then it's a question if you, as an American, for example, or a Westerner, if you want to buy such thing where you have this action camera where you need to log in with name and password into an app on your phone to make this thing work. So that's a good question that comes up for you when you decide to buy a DJI camera. So, okay, so yeah, that's it, and thank you for watching this, and if you're still here, feel free to subscribe and come back later when I make a video where I compare the DJI with the GoPro. GoPro. That's a good comparison, I bet. A lot of people are going to be interested in that. And you have a great day, and I see you later in the next video.